Hello and welcome. This is going to be, I think, the start of a video blog of me recording my sort of hobby development of a video game asset pipeline. I'm going to be making an entire pipeline that connects multiple programs, a modeling and animation DCC, a texturing program, and a game engine. And I'm going to be recording my development on it and then commenting over it, probably in time-lapse form. And as I go, I may end up making some tutorials along the way for various stuff. And I will put up, if I haven't already by the time this video goes up, the GitHub repo with the code and the tools that I end up making that get developed throughout this series. And this is sort of me chronologuing more hobby work than making a real serious thing that I intend to distribute. So I'm not really looking for like pull requests or suggestions or updates. More so just me recording what it is that I kind of enjoy doing in my spare time. And so here in this first video, I'm going to just outline kind of some goals. And I'm probably going to wait until I'm like 6 or 7 videos in before uploading the first batch of them. I don't know how consistently I'll work on this. I've been doing a lot of this stuff for kind of various tools of my own in my spare time, but I do it very infrequently, so I don't know that this is going to have like a strict release schedule. But I'll kind of outline the goals here, and these are subject to change, but at least for the first few videos, it'll be fairly consistent. Maybe we'll do it as milestones, or maybe not. But like I said, it's going to be something that connects some programs. And so I don't exactly know where I want to go with this, but I want to have something that I can use for every project. And so there's one thing that sort of comes to mind right away. And so on indie teams or professional teams where I just need to deploy a bunch of tools very quickly, maybe it's on site somewhere, maybe it's for someone that I'm contracting for, maybe it's just an indie group that I'm hanging out with and doing some stuff with. There seems to be 2 concerns that come across every team when it comes to the asset pipeline. And I don't have a pen, so I'm just going to be right with my mouse, and it's going to look really bad. No, I won't. I'll use the text. That's a thing, isn't it? So there's consistent installations versus inconsistent installations. And then there's whether or not people are on a shared network drive or local drives that they're making the content on. So these kind of seem to be the 2 different axes. You're going to be on one pole of either of these axes. You might be on remote local drives and you have inconsistent locations. Maybe this is for a team that I'm a part of where they shipped a bunch of desktops to people, so they have consistent installations, but they're still on local drives. Maybe my primary day job, we have consistent installations and a shared network drive, so that's even different. Multiple people can write to the same place at the right time, which is a real thing to consider. So we'll need to kind of figure some of that out. And so I think what I also need then is I think I want to start everything from some sort of launcher. And so this is what's going to basically be the entry point. So this might end up launching some sort of pipeline settings tool, so that way then we can adjust those. It's probably going to end up launching our game engine. For this, I'm specifically going to be using Unreal. It has a pretty extensive Python API. That's just the engine that I'm most familiar with. Yeah, I don't know. So then we're going to have a modeling DCC. I'm going to be specifically using Maya because that is, again, what I'm familiar with. I just use it the most at work. I'm going to be, I guess, separating things so that maybe in the future I'll end up supporting something like Blender or Houdini or Max. But for now, it'll just be Maya. And we can I think for a lot of the UIs for tools, I'm going to make some reusable templates that we can use to kind of hook them up to different DCCs, so that shouldn't be too big of a problem in the future. I just don't know if that'll happen. And then we're probably going to be having some sort of texturing program. Whoops, what's going on? Can I type? There we go. I'm just going to put Substance kind of vaguely here. It could be Substance Designer or Painter, probably Painter. I've looked at those API docs in the past and have been not exactly the most pleased with them, but we'll figure that out, I guess, later. And so then at the start, I'm just going to be focusing on the game engine and the modeling and animation DCC, just getting stuff over. And I might end up, I'm sure that I'll be making something that parses FBX materials when they import in the engine to start with, because I don't know how much time it'll take to get something like Substance hooked up to where I could maybe kick out like a texture manifest, and we'll, I guess, figure it out from there. So then our launcher will basically launch each of these. And we might have some other stuff like a review tool or something. I don't quite know. Figure that out when we get to it. Yeah, so that's mainly that. I'm going to primarily be working in Python. There is some stuff in Unreal that we can do in Blueprint. And we probably will do that when the Blueprint interfaces are more convenient for a user. The single property views and the details views in Unreal are very great for just drag and dropping Unreal assets in. If there's some sort of tool that an artist or someone who's doing something needs for like level layout or for specifying something for settings. So yeah, we'll kind of get to that. I have found though that like I use a lot of JSON to store values, and although in Unreal 5 there is a Blueprint JSON plugin, it is very inconsistent in how stable it performs. I have had most of my blueprints just crash the engine if I try to compile them and they do something that references a blueprint or a JSON on construction. It's very frustrating. I don't really understand why. We're 3 versions in and they haven't really fixed that. 4 versions, 5.0, 1, 2, and 3. 5.3 is the latest Unreal at the time of this recording. I'm probably going to be using 5.2 for a lot of it because 5.3.0 is out and I tend to not like the initial releases. They tend to be less stable. And I'm going to be using PySide 2 or PyQt for my primary UI builder of choice, and I'm just going to handwrite all the UIs. I don't really like using the Qt designer. That thing kind of feels like it was made in '95 and never got updated. It's so frustrating. And yeah, we'll kind of see how we go. I'm using PyCharm as my IDE, and all that should be set up ahead of time. And I'm going to have a few generic libraries that I'll paste in. I might briefly talk about them, like just a general IO library, an Unreal IO library, a Maya 1. And they're just kind of based on the workflows that I like to use. And I guess on that note, one thing that I want to explore throughout the series is just workflows. There's a little bit of getting assets out of your DCC and into your engine. And yes, there is like a program to program and step to step just data flow, but there's also a doing it, constructing the data flow or shaping it in a way that fits some sort of workflow for you. And after I get a lot of that initial data flow set up, I plan to look at that and kind of talk a bit more about workflow from a pipeline development standpoint and workflow in terms of like supporting an artist's workflow from a development standpoint, and see how we go from there. Yeah, so I guess just a little bit more to talk about. We'll need some form of asset publishing. We'll need some form of animation publishing. Eventually, we'll want something to do with metadata from our modeling DCC, possibly something to do with layout. So those will be there. Over here, we'll want asset importing, animation importing, versioning. Nah, probably not over there. Again, the layout question mark. And whoops, that's not what I want. I'm sure that there will be some form of versioning here, so that way then you're not just overwriting the same file every time. But how that relates to the game engine, I'm not quite sure yet. Maybe every time we publish, we'll make a version list, which is always the latest version, and then also make a new version to file. That way then the game engine just has to look at the version list file and can constantly re-import. That does end up being a problem if the base asset changes pretty significantly. Like if you swap all the materials that are on it to completely different ones, from like 5 materials to 17 or to 1, and the geo's completely changed in how it's bound to a skeleton. Unreal kind of just has a very terrible job at understanding the difference for that, but I don't know that things will be that drastic. They'll probably just be encouraged to be published as a separate asset. And then I don't exactly know for substance yet. We'll definitely need asset importing, texture exporting or publishing. And again, I don't really know if versioning will be involved or not. Yes, and then I guess here we'll just say like consistent installations, or we'll call this installation consistency. Shared remote drives, stuff like that. We'll probably have some sort of a dev and debug mode. And then I don't exactly know in what manner I want to do these in. There will probably be, initially in Maya, I'll probably get set up some sort of asset publishing. And then after I get exporting just working at all, and with writing files to disk, saving some thumbnails and some metadata, maybe just the assets. Then I'll come back through and do the metadata. And then I'll come back through and probably implement a system that keeps track of, hey, you publish things under this sort of context, like an animation or a layout or an asset. And Maya can just kind of keep tracking how you're making content. That way then whenever you open another tool, they can sort of read, hey, how are you making content? And then know how to configure themselves. But that probably won't be a first pass thing. And then again, it's probably similar to Unreal. Not 100% sure. And then our UIs in Unreal, I'm going to have, I briefly spoke about this earlier. Primarily, most of them are going to be made in Qt, at least the asset pipeline ones. There will probably be a toolbar that I'm going to make in UMG initially just to have some buttons to launch some Python commands. And I'm going to try and keep as much Python files outside of the engine. And I'm just going to feed in the paths to that whenever we start Unreal through the environment variables. And I might go over that whenever I get to it, just kind of explain that more in detail if you don't know. I'm also not 100% sure what kind of people are watching this. I'm just sort of doing it for fun. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my overview for now, and we'll see where this goes. I don't really know anything yet about directory structure or sort of artist rules or what kind of things I want to think about when supporting. I'm just going to, I think, start by getting the project set up and get some very basic tools, and we'll think about directory structure probably when I get to the Maya publishing, which will be the first real task to get done after getting in some libraries, getting the launch process and stuff like that.